When I finished my first night at my new job, I didn't know what I was walking into, but I was just trying to get home. I live near a small town, in an even smaller area that doesn't have a lot of people. I had never seen a bus stop there, but I figured it's one of those where the bus has such small numbers of people that it will just stop whenever you press the button. I was happy with it at first. I applied, got the job, and was now finishing my first day and feeling my palms sweaty, looking forward to seeing what the bus ride would be like. However, now standing in front of the bus's open door, inviting me in expectantly, I felt nervous. The first thing that got to me was that I couldn't see the driver. The front window was obscured because there were no lights on the driver's compartment, and inside there was a door that separated the driver's seat from the rest of the bus, which was solid and black. In the middle of it, there was a ticket dispenser, like the ones you see at the butcher shop. I thought I was being silly, shook it off, and stepped inside. There was no one else there, not that I could see at least. Then, nothing happened. I looked around confused, and then decided to pull the ticket out, snapping it out with a satisfying click. When the ticket was out and on the palm of my hand, the bus doors squeaked closed, and the bus started moving. I looked at the ticket. All that was on it was L3, written in thin, crooked lines. I looked up, confused, and above every row there were the seat letters and numbers. No L there. I climbed to the second floor, followed the rows, and there it was. My seat. Fourth row from the front. Aisle seat on my right. When I sat down and put my bag next to me, there was a small piece of paper stuck to the seat in front of mine. I was already uncomfortable. I was a bit of an introvert, so I wasn't too comfortable just picking that up to check what it was. However, there was no one around, and the piece of paper had my seat's number on it, so I pulled it off and turned it around. At first glance, it almost looked like a shopping list. This is what it said. Rules for the night bus. 1. You must take the seat on your ticket. If you do not, the night bus will forget about you. 2. Never fall asleep on the night bus. That would be rude, and the night bus will forget about you. 3. There will be a girl in white, a boy in black, and an old lady in red traveling with you. When the girl in white comes into the night bus, you must say hello, but do not say anything else. If you do, the night bus will forget about you. 4. When the boy comes into the night bus, you must ignore him. If you don't, the night bus will forget about you. 5. When the old lady in red comes into the night bus, you must smile at her, but do not talk to her, or the night bus will forget about you. 6. If the girl stands next to you, you must keep quiet and must not look at her. Do not look her straight in the eye. If you do, the night bus will forget about you. If the boy sits next to you, you must give him something, anything, as a gift. You must not speak to him, or the night bus will forget about you. 8. If both the boy and the girl stand next to you, keep your head down and look away until one of them leaves. If you lift your head and look, you must tell them to go away immediately. If you don't, and the lady in red starts coming closer, you must smile at her until she stops and goes back to her seat. If you do not, the night bus will forget about you. 9. If the old lady in red sits in front of you, you must reply to her every question, but never tell her where you live. If you do, the night bus will forget about you. 10. If you fail to follow any of these rules, you will have to run and knock at the driver's door. You must get the driver to open the door before the girl finishes counting to 10. If the driver doesn't open the door, the night bus will forget about you. Signed, nothing. I looked at it, confused for longer than I would have expected. I looked around, but there was no one there on the bus with me. I read these rules again and stuck them back where I found them first. The signed line was blank, which threw me off a little. Why was it that there was a list on my seat, but not on any other? As I gave this more thought, the bus slowed down to a stop, and I heard the doors squeak open downstairs. When I heard them, panic set within me, and I quickly picked up the piece of paper again and reread the rules one last time. When I started hearing footsteps coming up the stairs to the second floor, I slapped the paper back to its original place. At the top of the stairs, a small head with brown, shiny hair came up, bouncing at the sound of each footstep, a black, glittering shirt covering this person up to their neck. It was the boy. The rule said, 4. When the boy comes into the bus, you must ignore him. Just before he turned around, I immediately turned my gaze down and nervously focused it on the tiny hole starting on my jeans, my breath going so fast it started drying my throat and made it harder to breathe. The boy walked in front of the seats next to me, on the other side of the aisle, stopped for a bit, and said, "Hello," in a small, innocent voice. I felt so nervous that I almost blurted out "hello" back at him. I stopped myself, even though I still thought this must have been some kind of joke, and just ignored him as best as I could. The boy frowned and took a small step closer to me. Then he repeated, "Hello," almost as if asking me to just be nice and say it back to him. I was too tired and scared and just wanted to get home, so I ignored him like the rules said. He took a small step to the side and went to sit down at the back of the bus. I could hear him playing around with something back there, while I took out my phone and tried to focus on something else. I was almost thrown out of my seat when the bus suddenly slid to a stop. My phone flying out of my hands, but hitting the back of the front seat right under the rules list and coming back into my grip. I looked up, curious to see what was happening or who was coming on, and when I did, a small girl, dressed fully in white with blonde hair, was looking straight at me with a big smile on her face. Her face, it looked like death. It looked like she had died 3 times before getting there and was now standing like nothing had ever happened. I avoided having any kind of eye contact with her, focusing on her half-rotten white moldy dress. "Hi," she muttered, her voice sounding like her vocal cords had been ripped apart. "Hello," I said, waving at her while keeping my head down, and quickly trying to unlock my phone again to pick up some game or something. She asked me how my night was, but the rule said to say hello, and then never say anything else, right? That's what it said. I wanted to reach for the rules to read them again, but I was too scared of what might happen if I wasn't supposed to read the rules again. I was sure it said not to talk to her anymore, so I kept my mouth shut, and it seemed to work. After asking me a few more questions and getting only silence in return, she gave up and went to the back seats to join the boy. The bus didn't stop for another 5 minutes. Occasionally they would try to get my attention, but the rules said to ignore it. The problem was how tired I was. I'd been working all day at my first job, trying to learn as much as possible, which had tired my head, and now all I felt like doing was nodding off to sleep and waking up a bit before my stop. Somewhere on the trip, I started thinking how stupid these rules must be. Sure, the girl looked really strange, but what would they do if I... My head bounced forward once. That was all it took. As soon as I balanced it back up, the two kids were standing next to my seat, eyeing me expectantly and holding hands with this creepy, dead smile on their faces and eyes wide open. What did the rules say about this? I looked slightly up to see if I could reach for the rules list, but somehow it was gone. Desperate, I looked around as much as I could without looking at them. The list had somehow fallen and slid under the seats and was now at the front of the bus, on the floor. I was debating in my head whether I should go get it or not, when the bus slowed down smoothly and stopped. The two children giggled and sat on the seats next to me, on the other side of the aisle. Rule 7. If they both sit next to you, don't look. And then what? Was that rule 8 or 9? A different set of footsteps entered the bus. These were slow and dragged and made the bus move quite a bit. I heard the bus doors close, but it didn't move. Not yet. Another head showed up at the stairs opening, slowly and painstakingly appearing. It had to be the old lady in red. Her hair was so white, it was almost see-through. If she didn't have a red linen square covering most of her head, I would be seeing her skull. Around her shoulders, a red linen shawl full of moth holes. When she got to the top of the stairs and started walking to her seat, I wasn't expecting it to be right in front of me, right away. As I smiled in her direction, she didn't hesitate. She sat down, threw her walking stick to the side, chuckled slightly and said, "Good evening, boy." I couldn't see her face. I was afraid to look up because of the kids, but I was scared of breaking any of the rules, which I couldn't even remember that well anymore. If the old lady in red sits in front of you, you must answer her every question. You must not? Good evening? I hesitated. No reaction from her or the kids. Still long until you get home? I hesitated. I wanted to look at her, but didn't. Yes, it's still a little while. At this, the boy got up, walked across until he was close to me, and gestured towards my backpack. I picked it up, and with my heart thumping, gave it to him, without ever looking. I think that's what the rule said, but I couldn't be sure by now. Don't look at the girl. Ignore the boy, but give him anything he asks for. The boy picked my bag up, made a nodding gesture and opened my bag, and started rummaging inside. Then he took out my pencil case, dangled it in front of his face, and asked me, "What do you keep in here, mister?" I stayed quiet, to which the old lady reacted, "It's rude not to answer, dear." "Yes, but I cannot. I am very sorry." She nodded, the little girl giggled, and the boy insisted, "Do you always take your bag to work, mister? Do you always bring this case with you?" I didn't reply. "Could I have it?" he asked. I stayed quiet and focused on my phone. I was sure I was doing the right thing, but I could have pissed myself right then and there with all the tension I was feeling. Like the air itself was starting to smother me. Then he seemed to give up. He dropped the pencil case back into my bag, closed it politely, and put it down next to me. However, instead of leaving, he stood there, doing nothing. Worse than that, the girl stood up and joined him, and they both just waited for something. Was there a rule for this? Was there... My eyes widened when the memory came into my head. Me, as a small boy trying to make friends in school's recess time. There was a girl that I used to find so pretty. I only wanted to be her friend, but when I tried, "Go away." That's what she had said. I don't remember feeling such sadness ever again. I cried for the rest of the day and never tried to speak to her again. "Go away," I said, timidly. The rule said if they stand next to you, tell them to go away immediately. However, they didn't move. Confused, I looked up at the old lady's back of the head, and then at the boy and the girl. When I did that, their eyes grew. Their smile spread slowly, and the old lady started standing up. Did I do something wrong? I searched through my brain, trying to bring the rules back into memory. The old lady in red stood up completely, back still towards me. She was so much taller than I had thought, her limbs the skinniest I had seen. The girl and the boy inched slightly closer. Then their rules sprang to mind. "Go away, go away." The girl seemed pissed now, the boy going back to his natural sadness, but they both nodded and moved away, back to the side of the bus. The lady in red, though, finished standing up, her walking stick going long until it touched the floor in the middle of the aisle. My heart was racing like a horse, feeling like it was almost jumping out of my mouth. Suddenly, she turned towards me and I could see her face. It was a melted expression like old candle wax. I could see part of her teeth through the dropped corners of her mouth and the insides of her lower eyelids because of how dropped they were. Her skin was unnaturally gray and wrinkly, and her hair was so thin it floated over her shoulders at any movement. Then I remembered to smile. She took one of the 3 steps she needed to get to me. I kept smiling. She took her second step. With every moment it seemed like her skinny limbs were about to give, but she never fell. As I smiled and she came closer, her face changed to a frown that told me she would be happy to make me disappear right there. When she was close enough, she leaned over while I kept my eyes and smile on her, like raising the cross to the devil. I couldn't remember which rule this was. One of the last ones, but it was there. How I wish I had the courage to stand up and get the rule sheet. She stopped an inch from my face, close enough that I could see the shiny saliva swimming around her lips. "You be careful, my dear," she said. I could feel her rotten breath, but kept smiling, while compulsively gripping away at my pants. "You don't want to go around breaking any rules." "No, ma'am, I do not." I kept smiling and didn't stop until she was back in her seat, face away from mine, and I could breathe. I wasn't sure how much more of this I would be able to take. I picked up my phone to look at the time. It would be at least 5 more minutes until I arrived, and this seemed like an eternity. I tried calling my mom to let her know I was almost there, hoping to hear her voice and maybe calm down. I pressed her name on my phone screen. The reception seemed good. The battery was fine, but for some reason, the phone didn't react. It didn't go to the call screen or go dark. It just seemed to ignore me. I don't think I could have done anything differently from that point. I didn't hear her move, and I just wanted to know where I was and when I could leave. When I raised my head and looked around to see out of the bus windows if there were any landmarks I could recognize to be dropped off close enough to my house, there she was. The girl was standing right next to me, again. And accidentally, while I tried to look at every window, my eyes crossed with hers. Immediately, everything changed. All at the same time, her face changed to a horrifying grin. The old lady in red tapped her long walking stick on the floor and started motioning to get up again. And the boy at the back of the bus went still, his pale skin looking more frozen than ever, and his expression changing into an extremely sad one, like he had no choice in the matter of what was about to happen. I tried telling the girl to go away, but she didn't budge. I tried smiling at the old lady in red, but she didn't go back to her seat. Then the girl chuckled, an altered chuckle, like something was inside her throat, changing her voice. "Silly goose," she said, rocking from side to side with her smile wrinkling over her sucked cheeks and sunken eyes. "What a silly boy," she repeated, while still rocking herself. Then she leaned forward. "Didn't you read the rules?" she giggled. I looked over at the piece of paper on the floor, trying to think about what I had missed. The words were almost shouted inside my head when the old lady in red came in front of the list, lying face down. Forgotten. Do not look at her straight in the eye. I broke a rule, one of the easiest ones as well. My stomach sank when I looked over at the lady and around myself, only to see the boys starting to move towards me as well. The girl startled me when suddenly she shouted, "One!" giving it a giggle after. The old lady in red and the boy seemed to float an inch closer. "Two!" her eyes looking cruelly happy and her smile reaching her ears. Another rule broke into my head like a bomb. Last rule. If you break any rules and the girl starts counting, get the driver to open the door before she finishes counting. If you don't, the night bus will forget about you. I took 10 breaths in quick succession, almost choking in one of them, sprang up, grabbed my bag and tried to shove the girl out of the way, but seemed to miss or go through her like she was made of mist as she giggled aloud. 3! She was almost singing. I stumbled down the stairs, listening to the boys' trotting footsteps and the old lady in red's walking stick knocking on the second floor's ground. I ran to the wall where the ticket dispenser was and started punching it while I heard "Bore!" now coming from the stairs. I looked over and the old lady in red was stepping down from the last step. "Please!" I shouted, while banging on the wall where there should have been a screen door. "Please let me out!" I cried. 5! I pressed the closest stop button, frantically, but the bus didn't react. It didn't screech to a halt, slow down, or even swerve. Nothing. 6! One thought assaulted my mind as the girl came down from the last step. The boy standing behind the old lady in red, both now about 2 steps away from me. Every seat had a stop button. Every single one, without exception. I was starting to hear different voices in my head, going louder by the second. Only I didn't understand why. 7! The girl sang with a giggle and a laugh and a chuckle coming out all at the same time. The old lady in red was reaching for me when I bolted through her like she didn't exist, and reached for the handrail to go back up the stairs, my backpack getting hooked and stuck on it. 8! In desperation, feeling my legs go numb, I let go of the backpack and flew up the stairs, taking the steps on 2 by 2. 9! I looked around for my seat, trying to look for the right number and letter. The ticket had stayed in my backpack downstairs, but I didn't have time to get it. I didn't have time. I launched myself towards my seat's stop button, and the girl sent out a loud laugh and said, 10! I was holding the stop sign down, hearing it ring without stopping in the background, but holding my eyes closed, not wanting to see or know what happened. Nothing seemed to have changed. The air felt the same around me, but I didn't want to open my eyes. I didn't want to see the 3 of them again. I just wanted to know that I was safe and would see my parents again. Then, softly, I felt the bus vibrate. I opened my eyes and held a breath in. Everything around me was dimmed down. All the colors seemed dimmed down to an almost smoky gray. There was no old lady in red, no little boy in black, and no little girl in white. All there was the bus moving softly along the road. I spun around desperately, realizing I hadn't reached in time. But how? I clicked the button. I looked at the button and at the seat, and realized I clicked the button for the seat just before mine. I crumbled to the floor, looking around, tears taking over my eyes and blurring my vision as I still looked for a way out. All I found was a flood of memories. Memories of playing football in the backyard. Memories of laughing while playing catch. Memories of tending to our farm animals and watching TV programs together until bedtime. Memories of breaking bedtime to stay together just a little bit longer, breaking the rules. In front of me, looking sadly at me, was the person I shared those memories with. The person I had forgotten about. The night bus had forgotten about him. My grandpa. I remembered now how one day he went to the town by himself and went missing. We looked for days until we forgot to keep looking. Now, there he was, crying in front of me, and somehow I knew he had written the rules for me. He had tried to save me. I stood up and ran to him. As I tried to hug him, he didn't move, and I slipped past him. We were both smoke now. We were both forgotten. All the people there on the bus with me now. We were all forgotten. Forgotten by the night bus. Forever.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this original creepypasta. If you did, please let me know in the comments and add a like to the video. Don't forget to subscribe and share this with anyone you think might enjoy a bit of a sleepless night. I do 1-minute horror stories as shorts, which you might also enjoy, especially if you like a chill at night in bed. I hope you're not catching a bus tonight, and if you do, I hope there are enough people on it for you to feel comfortable. Comfortable enough. Don't forget to check out our other videos, and before you go, are you sure you locked all your doors?